Hello and welcome to this special episode of Money, Money, Money. I'm Surabhi Upadhyay. Now, retirement is something that we all have in mind when we are thinking long-term wealth creation, which is why this week on the show, we are going to focus on this very simple subject: how to create the perfect retirement plan. I'll tell you what, beyond the Bitcoin and the crypto talk and the tech startups and all things jazzy, sometimes the simplest things work the best when you're talking about long-term sustainable wealth creation, which is why we go back to the basics. And this week on the show, we are looking at the Employee Provident Fund as well as the National Pension Scheme. Which one is a better tool? How should you divide your money in both of them? Well, to discuss that and much more, our guests have joined us. Preeti Chandrasekhar of Mercer India is with us on the show this week, as well as Harshvardhan Rungta of Rungta Securities. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining in. So, you know, this is that ultimate goal of every smart PF plan. You want to have a great life when you retire, and you want to retire early. So, Preeti, you kick it off. First thoughts on just the concept and deciding how much money do I need to save?
Thanks a lot, Surabhi, for inviting me on to the show. Let me start with how much does one need when one retires. A very simple, perhaps a replacement rate for the income is about 70% of your pre-retirement. 70 to 80% of the pre-retirement income is what you need when you actually retire. So that's a rule of thumb. And generally, if you see company-sponsored plans typically account for a replacement rate about 30 to 40% or even lower if your company restricts the Provident Fund corpus to just about 15,000 contribution, or you've moved jobs and you've sort of taken up the gratuity amount and just spent it, and you're not with NPS. With that, it ranges anywhere between a 25 to at best 50%. So very clearly, there's a gap of 20 to 30%. And this, I'm assuming that you're using all of it for annuity and not actually looking at taking of the lump sum. Coming to the next point on how much corpus. First rule of thumb is 25 times of what you need as an annual salary, and you would assume a 4% withdrawal for the next 20 years. There could be variations, but generally you would expect a 4% withdrawal at a minimum, and perhaps not go beyond 8%, because beyond that you will consume your capital away.
Preeti,
so that's my take on it.
Preeti, did you just say 25 times of your annual salary? Gosh, I'm already getting a headache thinking about it.
So it's 25 times what you need post-retirement. So let's say hypothetically, I require, let's say 20 lakh rupees per annum when I retire as an expense. I would need to have a corpus of 25 times that 20 lakhs is what I meant.
Okay, got that.
So that's a fairly big amount.
Yes, those are big targets we're already working with. So, Harsh, you know, the floor is open for you now. How do we, that's why I guess that's the reason why people are rushing to all things exotic. You want to know if crypto is going to make you that kind of money, or is it just pure equities where you need to be? Everybody wants that multi-bagger. But that's why it's important to get back to the basics. And I think of the EPF, again, this year they're offering 8.5% interest. It's absolutely locked in, rock steady. And therefore, the need for this show to ask whether sometimes simple things just work better.
Well, Surabhi, the first point is very clear. You very rightly said that, you know, while we may look at exotic products, we may look at products which, you know, promise or they look to have potentials which will generate exponential returns. You need to make sure that, you know, a very large chunk of your investment corpus is into, you know, conventional, traditional, non-exotic products. So while you may have some exposure of say 5 or 10% into exotic products, but that should not be forming the core portion of your portfolio, and especially for a goal which is retirement. So if you're planning for retirement, you cannot depend upon cryptos and all those things to fund your retirement. No, certainly not. So you'll have to look at certain other conventional products for a goal which is as important as retirement. If you're looking at general wealth creation purposes, you're looking at, you know, an exotic holiday. So you may just simply have a product which is matching to something like this, a crypto or something else for that matter. If it works well for you, great. You go on that holiday. If it does not work, then you do not go on. But retirement is not something that you can be dependent upon. Now, I'd just like to add a little, if you permit me. I'd just like to add into the first question that you had about what's the likelihood of, you know, what's the corpus kind of requirement. So you did express shock upon the fact that whatever your current expenses are, I mean, they're going to go up at the time of retirement. Yes. So when you're calculating a retirement corpus, you know, Surabhi, you need to be very clear in your head So there are certain considerations that you put into place. So one is, of course, what is your current, monthly expenditure? Then take into consideration the projected inflation rate that you will see before retirement. You project and you take into consideration the projected inflation post-retirement, because even after retirement, your cost of living is going to go up. You're going to take what is the likelihood of the returns that you get both on the investments that you make today
Sure.
and post-retirement.
Sure.
You're going to take into consideration the lifespan. Putting all this together, you can safely assume that 8 to 10 times or whatever your current expenses are, that's going to be your requirement in the first year of retirement.
Okay. We basically need to set aside a fair amount of money and make sure that we have that corpus when we're approaching, age 60 or earlier if we choose to retire early. So here's what we'll do. Let's quickly go over the features of the EPF scheme as it stands. And by the way, this year there's a tax change for contributions above 2.5 lakh rupees. The interest is going to become taxable. And then we'll, do the same for the NPS and then compare the two. So let's start with the EPF. And Preeti, that's the first question. Just go over the current setup. I think it's 12% of basic, and that's how much I contribute, how my employer contributes, and then how this new tax implication is going to play out this year.
So one thing I would like to say, Surabhi, is that EPF is a very simple savings vehicle that is very attractive to help save the working class on a regular basis. Now, if you just depend upon EPF alone to look at your 70 to 80% of your last drawn salary pre-retirement to be able to take care of you, as I said before, it will just perhaps account for 25 to 30%. So clearly, EPF is not the only vehicle. So coming back to your question on what is happening, what are the tax changes, etc., I would just like to talk a bit about the tax changes, in terms of what has happened. As per the government data, only 0.27% of the subscribers would get affected by this rule. So clearly, we are not talking about the masses. And as tax regimes change, right? I mean, I will not expect the same tax regime for 30 years of my employment, or perhaps more. We've seen how things have changed from dividends, from stocks and mutual funds, how they're treated, long-term capital gains, etc. So one can really not expect the tax regime to continue the way it is forever. Now, going back to the EPF, I would think that EPF would continue to be attractive for the largest sector of the population. That will continue. What will perhaps change is for the top layer of the population, where they have choices of other instruments, and rightly so, they would perhaps look at other options where they can get a better return, which is more attractive from a tax standpoint.
Okay. So, Harsh, your thoughts on the EPF, and the fact is that for a lot of